Our speaker this morning is Vinnie D. I mean, I tried to get the correct pronunciation. I know I'm going to fail, but Vinnie, forgive me. Apparently, Vinnie, who's been a longtime member of our Ethical Humanist Society, from a very young age, apparently really became interested and cultivated what he calls a reverence for all things living and caring for the environment. He achieved degrees in horticulture, business management, has an MBA in marketing, and has a 40-year career at major retail garden centers and plant nurseries on Long Island. Vinnie is also an educator, an adjunct professor of horticulture at the Urban University, at the Urban Forestry branch of Cornell University. And at Farmingdale, he also is an adjunct teacher for the State College. Vinnie apparently has found his true calling. His dedication extends to doing a lot of work on our premises here at EHSLI. He's a past board member with our society and is a current member of the garden committee here to make our place beautiful and has succeeded quite well. Thank you, Vinnie. He also has been a senior lifetime New York State certified nursery and landscape professional and an ISA certified arborist. Vinnie has written several books. He's authored a number of articles in various journals, including Fine Gardening and the Horticulture magazine. He also writes a monthly column in the New York State Landscape Contractor newspaper. And Vinnie, in reference for your presentation, I wore green.
Thank you, Joan. So, good morning, everyone. And so now you know a little bit more about me. And my ethical dilemma this morning, I'm going to talk about lawns. So if you're feeling a little cabin fever right about now, and sick and tired of looking at the snow on the ground, let's focus on spring and summer and a beautiful green lawn. Now, the dilemma that I have with lawns is I know too much perhaps about their care and what they are, what is required. And one of the biggest issues I've had, and the cause of my dilemma, is using pesticides, dangerous chemicals. And I speak with authority, I believe, because of my education and what I do for a living, but I also, I am a New York State certified licensed pesticide applicator, so, and I have been for about 45 years. So I know the dark side as well as the world of retail and selling and the business world part of pesticides. Now, in my early career, for the first maybe 30 years, I sold retail and to professionals pesticides. I purchased them, I sold them. I worked for large companies like Hicks Nurseries and a company that's no longer around, Flower Time, which was a chain of 20 garden centers throughout Long Island, New Jersey, and Connecticut. But throughout my whole early career in the business world, it really was because of my love of nature and my sense of wanting to always protect the environment, I found it difficult to sell pesticides. But that was required. That was kind of the mandate as part of my job of managing the garden pesticide departments. But I always, when I helped customers and answered questions, I would always try to redirect them towards not buying chemical pesticides and educate them on how to do a better job of managing their lawn without the use of pesticides. So, to give you a little background, first of all, how many people here have a lawn? Raise your hands. How many people do their own lawn care? Very few, right? If you're a homeowner. If you're not a homeowner and you are living in a facility somewhere, maybe a co-op, a condo, or some other living arrangement, you probably still have a lawn where you live, or some kind of a landscape. And as far as I'm concerned, you still have an environmental footprint, because you can influence how that property is managed, I'm sure, as a resident, even as a renter, so on and so forth. So I think we all have to have some concern over this. Now, what's the problem? I jotted down some of the issues that I had over the course of my experience, and this is kind of off the top of my head, but lawns are environmentally and economically unsustainable, meaning that they're harmful to the ecosystem because of the pesticide use and some of the other things that go on, like mowing pollutes the air. Noise pollution is a big part of that, right? Who doesn't, who loves having the landscapers outside on a Saturday morning with the mowers and the blowers going, right? So that's noise pollution. So, there's other problems with all of that, with harming other living things in the environment, wildlife, and even beyond that. Some of these pesticides escape into the groundwater, polluting our groundwater, or they escape into the local streams. And where does the water in those streams eventually wind up? In our seafood, and we eat it. Yeah, you were thinking, oh, at the beach or in the ocean, yeah, but how many people here love to go out and have a nice seafood dinner or eat fish for health reasons? Yet, sometimes it's the unhealthiest thing that you could eat because it's from polluted waters and contains toxins, including pesticides, as well as other toxins. So that's my dilemma right there. And I was always very uncomfortable encouraging people to have a lawn. So some of the other things that a traditional lawn has a problem with me is that you need to mow it 1 to 6 times a month during the growing season. I mean, it's great if you have the wherewithal to have somebody else do it, that you're paying to do that, but it's still a big maintenance chore. That's costly. There's always costs to these things. The chemical pesticides are a cost. The mowing is a cost. It needs watering, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week during hot, dry weather. Some people overdo it. Where does all that excess water go? What happens to it when you do too much of that? Well, the water evaporates away or it seeps into the groundwater. Again, it's an added expense. It's a cost. Everybody here that has a home probably gets a water bill, right? Nothing's free. So, that's another problem. To maintain a good, healthy lawn, the way we care for it in the traditional manner, we need to fertilize it to keep it green and healthy. Of course, we can choose not to do that, but the green and healthy part goes out the window within a year or so, and you have a terrible looking lawn that's, mixed with all kinds of other plants called weeds growing in there. And I don't have anything against weeds. They're just plants growing where they don't belong. But again, it irks people, and it's really a societal thing, I think. It's really our culture. We've been sort of fooled into thinking we have to have a lawn. So when lawns are not cared for at a very high level, they do get pests. They get insects, they get weeds, they get diseases. And guess what? To fix those problems, we use pesticides. Now, the way I think of pesticides and the way I try to teach people about pesticides are pesticides are nothing more than drugs, medicines for the lawn. Now, a lot of folks are taking care of their lawns by just putting down tons of pesticides in hopes that it'll take care of whatever might come along. And even professional landscapers do that. They usually sell people on a program, and that program is usually 4, 5, 6 applications a year of fertilizer with a cocktail of different pesticides. Yes, it's like the hit or miss thing. Sooner or later, I mean, you are going to conquer every possible problem that might come along, but most lawns, if they're well cared for, they won't get more than maybe 1 or 2 problems in any given year. So why do you need those 3 other pesticides or more? It's a waste. It's also unethical because under our New York State pesticide laws, you are not really allowed to apply a pesticide if there is no target pest. And nobody ever makes a big deal about that, but coming from my world as actually I do a lot of pesticide education for both the public and professionals. You're breaking the law when you're putting down pesticides and there's no reason to do it. Just like a doctor prescribing medication when you're not sick, where you don't have an ailment, he would be breaking the law, or she would be breaking the law as well. So why do we let that happen in the world of lawn care and pesticides? When I was in Europe a number of years ago, I was actually visiting garden centers. You know, that's my, crazy, quirky world. I was on a garden center tour. And one of the things I noticed is that in Europe, they regulate pesticides to the point of where when you go into a garden center and you need some kind of a bug killer or weed killer or whatever, you need to step up to a desk, which is very similar to a pharmacy here in the United States. You have to speak to the pharmacist there, someone who's licensed and certified to sell pesticides, and they have to diagnose what your plant problem is and then make a prescription of what to use and then sell it to you. Now, you think we have crazy regulations here? We're like the Wild West here when it comes to pesticides. You can walk into any big box hardware store, any garden center, and pick up sometimes the most toxic thing known to mankind and buy it and use it without any intervention from an expert. And that's where we run into a lot of problems because people a lot of times are misinformed or they just are ignorant or lazy and they're applying pesticides for no good reason, for the wrong problem. They're treating the symptom and not the cause of the problem. I get that all the time with where I work at Cornell, diagnosing plant problems, or people coming in with a problem and saying, my landscaper's been applying a fungicide, 6 times this year so far, and it's still, my lawn is still brown. What's wrong with it? I look at the sample, I put it under my microscope, and I go, well, he's been using a fungicide to treat an insect pest problem. He should have been using an insecticide. So even the professionals out there that are applying pesticides, remember, businesses have a secret agenda. It's called profit. They will sell you anything and everything. And, for those homeowners or those professionals who are guessing at it, sometimes you guess right, sometimes you guess wrong. So, that's the issue that that I have with them. And the chemicals are expensive. And if your lawn has a fungus problem and you go to the garden center and you see the price of the fungicides, they're always more expensive. That's just the nature of that particular chemistry. The insecticides are cheaper. So what do you think most people do? They opt for the lowest cost product and use it to no avail. Doesn't solve their problem. So I see over the years all this nonsense going on, and it always bothered me. And one of the reasons why I might not be in the world of business anymore, I have the feeling, is that the business owners that I worked for probably saw that I had this hate for using pesticides, and I would always try to talk people out of using a pesticide, help them figure out what the real cause was, and then address that instead. And that may have been a loss of an expensive sale of a pesticide at that point, but I think that the customers that believed me and followed my advice and got good results became our best customers in the long run. And I used to tell people, some people used to say, but this, you're not going to make any money off of me. I go, take that money and buy some pretty flowers or, a nice garden ornament. We had, at Hicks and the other garden center I worked at, we had lots of things you could spend your money on. You didn't have to spend it on a pesticide you didn't need. So, that's kind of what my background with lawn care and, my ethical dilemma. So what I want to do is ask you folks, if you were in my case, if you were in my situation, what would you do? Because I came to a point where I was let go from one of the companies and I had to do some deep thinking. But what would you do? Anybody?
Okay. You can come on up, or I'll bring the mic toward you.
Vinnie, I would probably do what you're doing, but I have a question. It seems that lawns are the problem and cause and encourage the use of pesticides, either for a reason or whatever, and with the bad influence they have on the environment. So what could we substitute for lawns that would really be a bigger solve? In other words, lawns are a social thing. People want lawns, they figure that's proper. I happen to live in a homeowners community, and we have lawns all over the place. Most of them are common area lawns. And we certainly use pesticides and everything, and they complain when there's weeds. But what could be substituted?
I'm going to cover that in a few minutes. Good. I'm glad you asked.
Okay.
Spot on.
Want to respond?
Well, yeah, I could do it right now, unless somebody else has a burning desire to share with us what they would do. There are two people in this room that I know that don't have lawns. One of them is Arthur Dobrin, and the Dobrins, they've never had, I don't know if they've ever had a lawn, but since I know them, they've never had a lawn. And David Sprinson and Alice. Alice and David, they live in the middle of the woods, and they don't have a lawn, and it's great.
I have a comment and a question related to that. We don't have a traditional lawn. Requires no maintenance at all. It's green all year round, doesn't have any fertilizer, no watering, no weeding, nothing at all. However, it doesn't look like a traditional lawn. So we had the code enforcement at Westbury come to our house. And they said, we have a complaint about your unkempt front of the house. However, as luck would have it, since we've been living there in that same house at that point, probably close to 50 years, we happen to know the code enforcement person, because he went to school with my kids. And he gets out of his car and he says, we've had a complaint. And he looks at me and he says, you're Eric and Corey's father, right? We said, yeah. He says, oh, forget it. He says, just neaten it up a little bit. But the point is that most of us don't have that option. It really does get neighbors upset, and it's very much a social thing. But related to that is, despite all of our trying to be as environmentally conscious as we can, we had poison ivy growing up. And we try to figure out how to handle this in a way that would be not harmful to the environment. We think we ran out of options and used probably the worst thing that we could possibly use, Roundup. But this was after having gotten some very severe poison ivy from trying to take care of it otherwise. It hasn't returned. Given that kind of scenario, what do you recommend that we do? Do we use Roundup? Do we do something else? We let it grow, forget trying to pull it out so I don't get poison ivy in the future?
Thank you, Arthur. The wonderful thing about poison ivy, it's a native plant. It is, but it is a noxious native plant, so it's not something that you want on your home property or in public areas and such. And I would say that there's a lot of misunderstandings about Roundup and some of the other pesticides out there. Well, first of all, as a pesticide educator, and I am certified by New York State to do pesticide education, one of the problems with pesticides is that people don't read the labels. The label is the legal document, and the label includes important information like how to use the product safely, and on pretty much all of the pesticides, they will list, if it's required, PPE. Now, everybody went through COVID and knows what PPE, but when I said PPE before COVID, nobody knew what I was talking about. But most pesticides do require that you protect your body from coming in contact with the chemical. Most pesticides can be absorbed and taken into your body in many different ways, through your skin, through your mouth, breathing it in. There's many entry points, so there's many different methods of preventing that, and using PPE like gloves that are chemical resistant, a mask if required, goggles to protect your eyes, because if you get the chemical in your eyes absorb it faster than any other place on your body. So what typically has been happening in the world of applying pesticides with professionals as well as homeowners is everybody ignores the label. They don't wear the PPE, and they're getting the pesticides on themselves. And if you're working in the industry, like if you're a landscaper and you're applying pesticides, you do have to be licensed to apply pesticides commercially. Many are not licensed, and many can't even read the label. A lot of these pesticide lawsuits are a result of, basically, from my point of view, people are winning lawsuits, yet they use the product breaking the law. In New York State, we have laws that actually delineate that you are breaking the law if you don't wear the PPEs. So if you come down with cancer and you're blaming a product, these product manufacturers have a way of defending themselves against that because it's on the label, which is required by the federal labeling laws and the state pesticide registrations. So they may not be winning all the cases that the commercials are saying, so don't believe everything you see on TV. I do know, I've used pesticides since I was in my early 20s on a regular basis. I never used pesticides anywhere, indoors or outdoors, without protecting myself. And that's an issue that, but what it does is it gives a misinformed fear to the public about pesticides. Now, believe it or not, if, Roundup is sold everywhere, and it's one of the most, commonly known herbicides, but it's one of the least toxic herbicides. There are ones that are much worse, much more toxic, and there are different levels, and it's delineated on the label. But who here knows how to read a pesticide label? Well, if you would like to, you can take one of my classes. Okay, that's what I do for a living. That's, my little nerdy world thing that I do. So I teach professionals as well as homeowners how to read a label, but, you have to take some personal responsibility when you use them. Roundup is probably the best thing because Roundup is the least toxic, and it has a lifetime expectancy in your environment of about less than 24 hours. So it disappears really, it gets eaten up by the environment. It biodegrades.
Alice and then Lorraine.
First of all, the only pesticide I use is something I squirt that says eradicating poison ivy. I hope it's Roundup now. Okay, you said I don't have a lawn, but I do have a little lawn. It keeps getting smaller and smaller. I have an electric mower. I can mow the whole thing from start to finish in 15 minutes, but it is completely weeds. And they change, like they're constantly, one's taking over the other, so some of them have flowers even, but
Don't feel guilty.
when,
In a few minutes, you're going to find out that you're ahead of the curve on
well, when you mow it, it looks like a lawn, and, you have to have something or else it's just mud. But, so this seems to work as long as you keep it out of the beds, so they like to crawl into the beds.
Lorraine?
So I just want to point out, I want to go back to Rick's question because I don't feel like you thoroughly answered that, which is about.
I haven't, because I'm going to get to it.
Yeah, I'm skipping, do you want to, but I just want to point out that we're having this ethical dilemma right here, and Vinnie will address that for us in our new parking lot, the areas on either side. There is a very big dilemma about what to put there, and how do we get it to look viable? How do we get it to grow? And that's the other thing. I mean, native plants might be native, but they still need water. There are solutions, but it's not easy. It's not easy to make the transition. It might do the same. We had the same thing in our house. We have a tiny little lawn in front, and then flowers. Of course, we still need to water when it's hot and dry, but at least those plants are sustaining the environment. And then also, if we had this tiny little piece of lawn, people seem to think that we're taking care of things because when they see this other jumble, they appreciate it. And then, I think it's because of that little patch that we have, which is also weeds.
So let me, unless there's any other questions, we have. Oh, wow. Generating a lot of questions here. That's good.
Okay,
There he is.
Rich, we're waiting for you, Rich, to see.
all right, thank you. So here's my question, Vinny. I live in a condo community now, and they tell us a day before that they're gonna come in and spread the pesticides. And should I turn off my air conditioner when they're in the community?
Yes, you should. In fact, that's part of the law in New York State, and neighbor notification law is part of that. You have to notify the people that live in the building, on the property, and the neighboring properties that a pesticide's going to be applied. So you can do that so that you can pull in the patio furniture or the lawn furniture or the kids' toys, or you can close the windows and shut off the air conditioners when pesticides are being applied. So it's written in the law in New York State. So a lot of people don't know about that, okay? But, ignorance is bliss. So if you really looked at all the laws in New York State, you'd probably, head for the bus station to move away.
Thank you.
question. The golf courses that are ubiquitous all over Nassau and Suffolk, all over Long Island, are they under these restrictions that you're commenting on?
They are, but I will say they are under the same pesticide restrictions. And that lawn care is a whole different ball of wax for those professionals. The golf course superintendents are under mandate from the club and the members of the, you know, whatever they have there, to keep the lawn looking green no matter what. And they will do some pretty wacky things besides using pesticides, but a lot of them have started to, because of requests from their clients, they're moving towards organic or what we would call lawn care without pesticides practices. But sometimes to keep the green, they will actually use green spray paint in certain situations, especially if there's a big event coming up. So they have little tricks that they do. Homeowners can buy that stuff. If you have like an event, you're having a pool party, and you got some big brown spots in the lawn, you can buy a spray paint to paint the lawn green. It's temporary, but it gets you through that weekend or that event. So, I mean, you know, it's like it's a food coloring paint. It comes in the aerosol cans and it's ready to use, and so there are remedies.
Stacy, and then come on up. Okay. Hold on.
What about rugs? We use rugs, grass rugs.
Yeah. You know, another weird thing, a lot of movies are shot on Long Island at places like Old Westbury Gardens and Planting Fields. And the lawns are always perfect in the movie. And that's because they do lay down rugs or they do use this colored paint. So there's, you know, little tricks that are done. And on camera, it looks great, right?
Last comment. Yes. Last comment.
Hello.
Well, actually, thank you very much for this discussion. I will tell you that this was my original garden I created when I moved into my home in Westbury. I mean, I dug it up. I dug everything up. I was going through, you know, a crisis, and heck, my son was in college. He came home. He thought I was completely insane, but the bottom line is it was very therapeutic. Now, that's about 25 years ago. I have since become a horticultural therapist, which is the training that, part of the training that obviously as a horticulturalist he has. And I learned all about, you know, all these issues related to how am I going to protect weeds, et cetera. Anyway, my gardener's an old, and I could say this because I am, an old Italian gardener who's done half of Westbury, or family has, and I go and I get anything I want to be put on the lawn. It's out of his like thought process, but that's the way I do it. And I feel like I'm somehow contributing a bit. And thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You do
Thank
so
you.
much nice work.
And thank you, Vinnie.
Can I finish up?
Please do.
So I don't want to leave you without some ideas on what you can do. And this is what I'm always talking to people about at Cornell Cooperative Extension, and I'm sharing with the professionals that I'm teaching about how to use pesticides. So there are some alternatives. We call them lawn alternatives, and these are just some ideas from Cornell University. You know, where the really smart people are, smarter than me. So first of all, the resources come from a website, and the name of the website is the Cornell Turfgrass Program. And all you need to do is put that in your browser, and Google will get you there in a split second. Cornell Turfgrass Program website. And I'll have these resources available. If you email me, I'll send you my notes here, and you'll have all the resources that I'm going to mention here. So lawn alternatives, they include doing things a little differently. You can start small with your lawn right now by creating a bee lawn. And basically what it is, a bee lawn, B-E-E, is for pollinators, bees. And you can very simply just back off and not use pesticides, because once you're inviting in wildlife like pollinators and bees, you got to get off the pesticides. So stop using pesticides. Start letting what grows there naturally grow there. One of the best bee attracting plants, clover. Now, clover is considered by many a weed, but the official definition of a weed is any plant growing where it's not wanted. And if you want clover in your lawn, then it's not a weed. If you want dandelions in your lawn, it's not a weed. Dandelions are good for pollinators too. And there's a whole slew of other plants that are native and non-native that are low growing and can tolerate mowing. In Westbury, the ordinance is the mowing, you cannot have anything growing taller than 6 inches. So this conforms with almost any local ordinance when it comes to lawns. And you would just mow it just like you normally would. When it gets, you can even let it grow a little taller. You need less water. Water it when it's needed, when we're having a drought. A lot of these plants are tougher plants. That's why they invade your lawn, and they are well suited to the conditions in your lawn. The only time I would recommend watering a lawn like this is during a drought, and maybe just once a week if we get no rainfall. If we get an inch or more of rain per week, no sprinklers, no watering, okay? Work with nature. So that's one lawn. It's an alternative lawn, a bee lawn. Another alternative to lawns is creating an urban meadow. Now, in this situation, you're going to bring in plants that maybe grow a little bit taller, but they only have to be mowed maybe once per month, or maybe not at all, maybe once per year. So it's all part of the rewilding philosophy that's going on. So you can buy seeds of native plants and reseed your lawn with that and let the lawn grow taller and mow it less frequently, and you'll be attracting all kinds of wildlife, pollinators, butterflies, bees, and it'll look nice from a distance. It'll reduce the need for fertilizer. The reason being is that the larger growing perennial plants have deeper roots. They pull nutrients up from deeper down, and they bring them up into the top of the plant. And if you leave the clippings, you'll be recycling those nutrients. So that's why you really don't need to fertilize, or maybe you could do it only once or twice a year at the most. And have a nice looking lawn instead. No pesticides. Again, you're inviting the wildlife. Then there's the pollinator garden. You could go crazy with that. Now, I suggest that you just reduce the size of your existing lawn and create these other little specialty gardens, like the pollinator garden. The plants typically get a little bit taller, so you may want to make an island or a bed off to the side and maybe leave that little patch of lawn that you can still have a little piece of lawn, but reduce the overall size. You'll have less mowing to do, less input from pesticides and fertilizers and so on and so forth. Cornell does have the Turfgrass Program website, which covers lawn care. They have a publication there called Lawn Care Without Pesticides. If you're into this stuff, it should become your Bible. Well, I'm sorry I said that at the ethical Society, but it is a great publication on how to have a nice lawn without the use of pesticides. And there's another publication there that's called Weed Suppressive Ground Covers. Cornell came up with a list of about 25 plants that are low growing. Most of them are ground covers. A lot of them flower, some of them don't, some of them are grasses, some of them are native, some of them are not native, but they all play and behave well, growing at lower heights, covering the ground just like a lawn, and they really don't need regular mowing.
Oh, sorry.
You finished? You finishing?
The lawn alternative.
Yeah, and I have a video, there's a video posted on the Cornell IPM website. That's, IPM stands for Integrated Pest Management, and that's what we call organic gardening, integrated pest management. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I'd be happy to do educational programs here. I'd be happy to send you my notes here, which have the links to all these resources. Just send me an email. You all have my email, right, on the membership list? It's my last name at AOL.com.
D.
Vinnie D. Drzewucki at AOL.com. So I'd be happy to share this.
It's spelled correctly in the program, so
Yep.
you
So you can,
see it there. Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Okay.